So we're here just trying to decide how to start this session together. We've been friends for a very long time. I will switch into Spanish in a moment, but I let Jampala have some idea what it is that I'm going to say. We're together committed for a long time to orienting our lives in the Dharma towards having some impact on social justice. I think this is a deep commitment that we've shared for a long time. We both have the very strange position in life of having been monastics doing academic work, so this is also a little bit making us strange together, so that was very helpful. Good basis for friendship, to be strange together, I think.
To be different, yes.
To be different, yes. To be eccentric together. This is a bit better. Ahora voy a cambiar al español para darles una presentación corta a mi amiga Jampa Tsedroen, que es una Bhikshuni desde más de 30 años. Recibió su primera ordenación de monja en el año 81 y recién celebramos juntas sus 30 años de Bhikshuni. Y en el tiempo, en estas décadas que se ha comprometido a este camino monástico, terminó su doctorado en lo que se llama aquí la tibetología en la Universidad de Hamburgo, con una concentración, por supuesto, en el budismo. Ha estado, aún antes de ingresar a sus estudios, ha sido una activista profundamente comprometida, activista en derechos humanos. Trabajaba por muchos años con mucha entrega en el asunto de la lucha para la libertad del pueblo tibetano. A la misma vez ha sido activista en el área de justicia de género, buscando maneras de rescatar o construir una equidad de género. Y su activismo le ha llevado a estar muy involucrada en el asunto de la ordenación de Bhikshuni. Y desde varios años ha recibido un tipo de beca para hacer investigaciones en el asunto de la ordenación de Bhikshuni que sigue hasta hoy en día, y es un proyecto fundado por el gobierno alemán. También desde el año 2013 ha formado parte de algo aquí que se lleva a cabo dentro de la Academia de las Religiones Mundiales, y es un proyecto en la Universidad de Hamburgo. Es un proyecto de investigación sobre la religión y el diálogo en la sociedad moderna. Y hoy nos va a compartir algo de sus pensamientos, de lo que ha estado pensando, contemplando y trabajando en esta área del eje donde la religión, los derechos humanos y el diálogo se juntan.
Thank you very much for your kind introduction, although I didn't understand, but I'm sure it was nice. So I must first apologize that I don't understand Spanish and I don't speak Spanish. So yeah, hello to everybody, and I'm very pleased to be invited to speak spontaneously to you for a few minutes without having prepared any paper. Venerable Damcho just instructed me to speak from my heart, and she told me that I should speak somehow a little bit about modernizing Buddhism, how to make the bridge between what the Buddha has to offer and what needs to be modified, and what are the big challenges for us today. So something into this direction. And so I was just thinking today morning, you know, I mean, I suppose from what I have heard about Venerable Damcho and about this project Ecovihara you are planning for in Mexico. I don't know whether everybody's familiar with it, but maybe you will learn about it. I heard a bit about it, so which sounds to me very interesting. So I had the feeling, in the way, it's similar to what we are undergoing in Germany now for some time, in thinking about how to establish Buddhism in a non-Buddhist country. And on the other hand, I had the feeling that from the way how Venerable Damcho was presenting it to me, that there's also some difference which made me very interested, is that there seem to be many people who are social activists and who really like to put Buddhism into practice, you know, and combine it with social engagement. And this is something we also have in Germany, but sometimes I feel all over the world it should be stronger, and something really needed and very important, and where Buddhism could really contribute. But we don't have it that much, and sometimes I'm asking myself whether this is really what Buddhism wanted us to be, you know, at the time of the Buddha, because we can ask the question, was the Buddha a social reformer? Did he want to change the world? And then I think Buddhologists would say, well, the Buddha's teaching was not about how to make the world a better living, but how to get out of it, how to get out of samsara, how to leave the world. So it was more concentrated on that and how to attain liberation. So it's not about how to engage with the world, but more about how to get out of the world, right? In a way, you could understand Buddhism like this. But I mean, working in the Academy of World Religions, my experience is that that when context is changing, also religion is changing. And if religion doesn't continue to change according to the causes and conditions and the circumstances and the context, then it may lose its, how do you say, its impact, its message, its, I'm missing the English word now.
Relevance.
Relevance. Now, this is the word I was looking for. Thank you. So it's losing its relevance, you know. So I think it's really important that we think about these challenges today and how, as Buddhists, we can relate to today's challenges to keep religion relevant. I mean, but now I'm already a little bit ahead of what I actually wanted to say in the beginning. Is, I mean, if you start thinking with how to establish Buddhism in a non-Buddhist country, then usually the traditional teachings say that you have the four groups of followers of the Buddha, the lay people, the lay women and laymen, and then also the Buddhist monks and nuns. So these are the four groups of followers the Buddha had, and they are felt to be very important to be there if you want to have all the teaching of the Buddha present. So usually what does it mean, I mean, to establish Buddhism and to preserve Buddhism is mainly, I mean, how do you preserve a tradition and how do you continue a tradition? It always deals with listening to the teachings and then reflecting them and meditate on them. And then I would add here also putting them again into practice. You know, this is, I mean, usually we have this threefold division in Tibetan Buddhism of hearing, contemplating, and meditating. And this is for sure very important. I mean, first you study the teachings of the Buddha and you reflect on them and you analyze and try really to understand the meaning, and then you relate it to yourself and you meditate on it and then try to reach enlightenment. But you cannot reach enlightenment just by meditation without doing the three higher trainings, right? The three higher trainings are the trainings of ethics and the training of concentration and the training of wisdom. So you have to put it together with the ethics. And then I think we get close to social engagement. I mean, how to practice it in daily life, how to make it livable in our society, and when you go to your work day by day and you have to relate to your family members, to your colleagues, and how to really live the tradition, and you preserve the tradition by putting it into practice, by understanding it well, and then really to put it into practice, into daily life. And then I think if you just get engaged without meditating and without reclusion, without really giving you some space in between to reflect and get some distance from your daily life and to think about, and then meditate and strengthen your motivation, then also something will lack. So it's always, I think we speak about Buddhism being the middle way, it's always about keeping in balance and avoiding the extremes. And I think many people look for some very clear guidelines, just some explanation. How should I do this? Give me like a cooking manual, you know. You say, well, you add that and that much flour and that much milk and sugar and butter and so on, and then you get a nice cake. But the Buddhist teachings, I think, are not like this, with a very clear guidance which you can apply to everybody at any time. But it's very much about becoming self-reliable. The Buddha has shown a path, and then you can go your path by yourself, but you have to find out in every day, in every minute again, how to put it into practice. So it's not a still rigid manual you follow, but it's very flexible. This is sometimes very nice to have a flexible advice, but sometimes also a big challenge, because then you always have this responsibility to find out yourself, how can I put it into practice, and how should I do it now? I mean, just to give an example, I mean, usually we have the 10 unwholesome deeds, and we have also among them that you shouldn't lie, right? And so then maybe in your society people say, well, yes, a little bit cheating, a little bit not saying the truth, maybe okay. And then the Buddhist teachers will all say, no, you should always really speak the truth. But then what does it mean to speak the truth? It doesn't mean you should violate other people by your words, right? I mean, you shouldn't speak truth in a way that you harm other person or that you violate their feelings. And so this means, I mean, you don't have to say everything you know. I mean, even if you know something, it doesn't mean you have to tell everybody everything you know, right? And this would not be lying. Lying means really you want to delude somebody. You want to
deceive.
Deceive. You want to deceive somebody, and you are looking for means how you can make people believe something that, so that they do something in a different way they may plan for, you know, right? So you really deceive them, and so you speak untrue words and try to make people believe something that is not true. And means there is already a lot of it depends on motivation and how you do it and what you say and to whom you say and whether it's really a complete act of lying or not. And for example, in Germany we have this very terrible history, you know, with people who, a whole nation that is responsible for killing of so many Jewish people. So, I mean, if at that time you had somebody at home who is Jewish and somebody comes and asks, is this or that Jewish person here? And you say no, it would be a lie. But it would be a lie to protect the life of somebody else, you know. So there can be even situations in which lying may be required. And you have to be very brave to do this, you know, to save the life of somebody. So you always have to measure in the situation what is the right thing to do. This, I mean, by not becoming rigid, you know, and not sticking too much to the word, but really looking in the situation how to apply. And the way how, I mean, from my experience, I mean, if we speak about bridging between what the Buddha has to offer and what needs to be modified, I think this is not only if you bring Buddhism to a non-Buddhist country, but even within one country itself, because the society is changing and conditions are changing and interest of people are changing and political systems are changing. I mean, all over Asia now, more and more we have democracy, and all of them have ratified the Human Rights Charter, you know. So they try to implement the Human Rights Charter. So this is also a challenge for Buddhism, how to cope with it, because Buddhism, maybe, I mean, my teachers always told me that in its very nature, Buddhism is democratic and doesn't make a hierarchy. And but in fact, if you go to Buddhist countries, it's very hierarchical and it's also very patriarchal. And like, for example, we were talking about Buddhist nuns, and we can see Buddhist nuns don't exist anymore in Theravada Buddhism and in Tibetan Buddhism, not the fully ordained nuns. They don't have the full ordination for nuns anymore, they have only for monks. And this has a huge impact on the whole power structure of religion, because on the top are all these male. I mean, you can easily see if you go on any website advertising Buddhism even in the West, you can hardly find women there, you know. Still, if you look into the news magazines, I mean, the journalists, the Buddhist journalists somehow become aware of it and try to get some women in. But, I mean, all the most famous teachers are all men. And this has to do with, less empowerment or not enough empowerment of women, not enough encouragement of women to become Buddhist teachers, and not giving them adequate education, not giving them adequate training, not giving them adequate vows. And so, I mean, then, I mean, being monk or nun or being a kind of Buddhist priest always is related to leading rituals, means you are also in charge of explaining, for example, giving refuge, giving lay precepts and so on to the people. So if this is all in the hand of those who are mainly fully ordained or who are Buddhist teachers, then there's not much space for women. For example, we have the International Buddhist Confederation, and it's an international organization founded some years ago in Delhi to protect the pilgrimage places in all over India and Nepal. And I mean, there are hundreds of monks who are representing all the different countries. Even Europe is represented by a man, you know. And I mean, when we had this meeting of all the members, there were only 2 tables with women. And still, some of the organizers felt that those who were assisting them to organize the meeting had brought in too many women, you know. Even we were maybe about 20 or 30, I mean, among hundreds, you know, they felt already this is a challenge and too many women, why all these women here, you know. So it's a little bit, I mean, it reminds us a little bit to the structure of the Vatican in a way. We always feel it's very different. Buddhism is gender open and very different, but if you become an insider and you live for decades within Buddhism, you sometimes really wonder, what did I come in? I mean, women are sitting behind, they get in the front, the monks are sitting on stage, the monks are sitting, or laymen, but the women always in the backside, walking behind the men. I mean, it looks really terrible, you know. And so, I mean, I myself was, when I was young, I became a Buddhist when I was 21, and I became a Buddhist nun when I was 22. So at that time I was very moved by what had happened to the Tibetans and the genocide they had undergone by the Chinese Red Guards, you know, the oppression they had undergone, and this terrible war and genocide. And I mean, I was very much engaged in Tibetan politics and in the human rights issue. And I thought, oh, Buddhists must be very much, and especially Tibetans, must be very much aware of the human rights, and they always also refer themselves to the human rights to point out that they have no freedom of practicing their religion in Tibet, you know, because the communist regime doesn't want them to practice religion. They feel religion is opium for the people, you know, so they don't want to have it. So, but then I must say, I was really very disappointed when I found out that when it comes to women equality, they felt that this has nothing to do with religion, that this is mixing politics with religion if you bring up the question of gender equality within Buddhism. They feel it's like two separate things. We should separate religion and politics. This is the lesson they learned from the West, right? I mean, coming to India also from Nehru and so on, they were taught it's important in modern societies that you separate religion and politics. So don't intermingle now religion and politics with each other, asking for gender equity. This has nothing to do. But this is the way how the Buddha has taught it. You should just follow what the Buddha taught. And men and women are different, aren't they? Women can have children, men can't have children. I mean, so they have different roles, they have different responsibilities. So this is all because of karma, right? I mean, you have the karma to be a woman, other have the karma to be a man. And this is just, you have to accept what is reality. This is a big challenge, isn't it? I mean, this is the real challenge, how to deal then with these kind of questions, you know. So my way of arguing here is completely different. I mean, from my perspective as a Westerner, I feel, and the way how I understand Buddhism is actually, I mean, look into the schools. In the schools, the children, if you, whenever Damcho mentioned, I guess during her introduction, that I'm working in the Academy of World Religions at the University of Hamburg. So when I had a professorship there in 2012, I was investigating a bit about school books and how the school books represent Buddhism. And then, I mean, I came along with some books about values. And then just general values, all people can share, whether they are secular or religious, so everybody can share the common values. Then if you go into the common values, you find the fundamental rights of Germany, which are in a way quite similar to the Human Rights Charter, you know, with all the gender equity and everything in. Everybody is free to be different, I mean, to have different religion, different color, different nation, different ethnic, and so on. And so, I mean, if you look into it, I mean, these children are brought up in the sense that these are the basics we are all sharing. Also, all religions are sharing, right? So then, I mean, the religions, they should be role models. They should be better than the average, isn't it? I mean, they should not just fulfill the minimum, but they should be role models, do better than the average, right? Because they claim to explain all about ethics and how to practice properly. So I feel if nowadays, since the context has changed in this way and it became the minimum of the standard value of all people in a society, then it can't be that the religions fall behind and can't make it up to the minimum, you know. This is, I mean, I would ask myself really, what would the Buddha tell us today, how to cope with this new social background? At the time of the Buddha, women had no rights at all. They had, I mean, always a man telling them what to do. They were like property of the household. They belonged either to the father or to the husband or to the son, and they were protecting them. So they were always under male protection. And maybe at that time this was the right thing to do. I don't want to judge, you know, whether it had been possible to make it different or not. But these are the facts, I mean, historical facts, how it was at that time. And the Buddha had to cope, and it was already a lot that he allowed women to become priests, to become Buddhist nuns, to teach others Buddhism, to stay on their own, and to have an own community, a corporation. But then, I mean, my feeling is, from what I see from the text, is that when the nuns' order was growing, and many women chose, instead of having children and serving the husband and the parents-in-law and so on, they decided they want to be free to teach and to practice and to meditate and study Buddhism. So they chose this life of an ascetic, of a Buddhist nun. So this was a real alternative, and still in Asian countries there are women who feel that they don't want to fulfill this traditional role of a woman, but they want to do this and serve in this way. And so then, I mean, if we have these women now, at that time, I think the society was just not ready to accept that women had so much freedom. So they had to put them again under some protection. So they put them under the protection of the monks order. So the nuns' order was subordinated to the monks' order, and they had to show respect to every monk, even if he is ordained for a single day. If the nun is ordained for 100 years, she's supposed to raise up and to do this anjali gesture and to greet him and to respect him, to bow to him and so on. So we have these kind of rules. So what I was mentioning yesterday, I think to Damcho, was something I came along with, a story in Taiwan, where there is one nun scholar, also an academic, who came to a conference, and she is working in an NGO who tries to support the government to introduce gender equity in Taiwan. So she's working in the United Nations and with the NGOs to have gender equity in Taiwan. And in a conference she read these rules for the nuns which subordinate them to the monks. It's called the 8 heavy rules, and the one I just mentioned is one of them. And she read all these 8 rules, and then she tore them up in the public meeting and said we have to abolish them. So this is a very interesting thing. I mean, how can you relate to these old texts if they suppress the women, for example, or if they are speaking in a way that, for example, they would not accept homosexuality. So all these kind of things, you know, the hot topics of today, if the text don't really, I mean, we are looking for what does Buddhism say about gender equity, what does Buddhism say about homosexuality, and then you come along with texts which are just horrifying and you don't want to show to anybody, you know. And this is the same for all the religions. I mean, most of the religions, I think they are under this problem, you know, because these are ancient texts from about 2,500, 2,000 years ago. So the wording of these texts is sometimes like you just want to tear them up and you don't want to relate and think we just have to abolish. But then, I mean, this very text she was tearing up, I had referred to in a recent article, which I published in 2013 with the Journal of Buddhist Ethics. I mean, I had mentioned there that we need these 8 rules because one of the rules says that, this is an ancient layer of the text, that nuns should expect or seek full ordination from the monks. Means at the very beginning, when there were no nuns, at that time, how did the nuns' order start? And first, in the beginning, the Buddha gave ordination to the first nun, to Prajapati Gautami, and then after this, he gave the permission to the monks to give ordination to the nuns. And later, development was then that the women could give ordination themselves, but the higher ordination, again, they had to ask the permission of the monks. So there have been different developments of this ritual over the centuries. But in short, if you look into the canonical text in the very beginning, there is this permission to the monks to give ordination to the nuns without having nuns. But this is not what was the later tradition when the order died out. At that time you needed both orders, the monks' order and the nuns' order, to introduce it. So I was arguing, since now we are in the same situation at the time of the Buddha, we don't have the nuns we need for ordination, then instead of saying, no, we have to wait for the next Buddha because nuns order has died out, we have to revive the nuns order. And then the monks do have the permission, this is canonical, you can find in this rule. And they just can do it. They can go ahead and do it as it was at the lifetime of the Buddha. The Buddha never withdraw this permission. It's still there, so we can use it for the time being to make it going again, you know. So for me, this really shows very nicely, very beautiful, the ambivalence of the Buddhist texts, you know. On the one hand, you want to abolish them and tear them up, and on the other side, you urgently need them to argue and to make your case, you know. So, and this shows the whole tension we have, you know, in which we need to find our balance now, how to deal with it in the daily life. So, you know, we have the example I gave, we have a story from Mahaprajapati, who I consider to be the first feminist we have in Buddhism. This was the first nun, the stepmother of the Buddha, and she went to the Buddha and said, well, you know, this rule, one of these 8 heavy rules you gave, this one rule, I would really like you to change. Huh? Instead of going by gender, who shows respect to whom, we should just go by seniority and don't bother about the gender, just go by seniority. If a nun is for a longer time ordained than a monk, then the monk should show also respect to the nun and not that you say, no, men show respect to the women. So the Buddha said, no, I can't do this because the people, the other religious groups wouldn't expect, nobody is doing this, nobody shows respect to women. So he was refusing. So now we have the problem, if this is the way how the Buddha is depicted in the Buddhist text, what does this mean to us? Does it mean the Buddha discriminated women? Or does it mean, well, it clearly shows that the Buddha was ahead of his time and he saw it will not be accepted. He did already a big change by allowing women to become nuns and to become priests and to play an important role as women in society. But if he would overdo, then he would lose the whole recognition in the society. This would be my interpretation. I wouldn't think that the Buddha was discriminating women, but I would think that the time, the circumstances didn't allow him. So, and from this text passage, which we have in the Vinaya, where the Buddha gave his own reason why he doesn't permit, so means now if the context is completely opposite, we have to change, right? And then it's still okay, we have the room for interpretation of the teaching of the Buddha there. But nobody is doing this. Everybody says, no, we can't change because this is what the Buddha said. And then there was, after the Buddha's passing away, there was this first rainy season retreat, and 500 arhats, monk arhats, came together and laid down what the Buddha has taught, and then it was fixed. These are the canonical texts handed down to us up to today. And at that time, Ananda, it was raised the issue that Ananda missed to ask the Buddha what are the small rules which we can change. So because he missed to ask the Buddha what we can change, we can't change anything and we just have to preserve everything as it is. And in my feeling, you know, this is completely contradictory to one of the main principles of the Buddhist teaching, because the Buddha said everything is impermanent. Everything that comes from causes and conditions is impermanent and will cease, you know. So I mean, to keep things, just try to keep things as they are and to preserve them in this rigid way would go against the Buddha's own principle teaching. It goes against compassion, it goes against non-violence, it goes against all of these principal teachings of the Buddha. So I think it is really important that we consider the context and remain flexible. And for sure, I mean, if we are talking about organization like a Buddhist nun's order or monk's order, we cannot say everybody can just decide on his own or her own how to change. It has to be somehow in an organized way. We have to do it together. But I think there is enough space to discuss and to negotiate and to think about what would be the proper way how to do it in a modern society. And I don't know whether I would really refer to it as modernizing Buddhism, you know. I mean, I somehow don't like the term modernizing because it always has something like you are making it superficial. You know, but I think, you know, we always have to go back to the original text, to the original sources, and we have really to try to find out what is the main message, what does this text tell me? I don't have to take it literal, I just have to understand what is the real content, in which context did the Buddha teach like this, and what was his main message, what did he want to tell me, what is the essence of the Buddhist teaching, and what is more the cultural things which are very strong, kept up, and which, I mean, if we introduce Buddhism to a non-Buddhist country, we shouldn't introduce the culture. We should really concentrate on the essence of the teaching of the Buddha and see what is the main teaching of the Buddha, and then also see what are the major principles and what are more the secondary teachings, you know. And we shouldn't make the secondary things more important than the basic things, like, for example, love and compassion, very essential, non-violence, pratitya samutpada, dependent arising. These are really the most important Buddhist teachings, and they have to be in front. And then all these little things like, how do I treat Buddhist texts? I shouldn't put them on the floor. I should treat them with respect, you know. I mean, this is not the same as killing a person or stealing or lying. And so, I mean, I think we really have to reflect, you know, if we do get very rigid about these minor things. I don't say just throw the text on the floor, you know. For sure it's good to treat Buddhist symbols properly and with respect, you know. But I think if we do this all very properly, but then scold the people and get very negative to them and say, oh, you don't know, you don't do this, huh? You shouldn't do this, we are Buddhist, huh? And then, but you don't show your compassion to the people, and you don't show kindness when they are really in need, and you don't phone them when they are sick and ask whether you can help them, then something is going wrong. So we have to find our priorities. So, in short, I think, you know, what I said before, I really appreciate very much that you want to be social activist, you want to put Buddhism into practice, you want to help that Buddhism remains relevant to the people, and that you really want to show how to put the Buddha's teaching into practice in nowadays contemporary society. And then, I mean, I think it has to contain the balance of contemplation and social engagement, both of it, so that you have room and time for teaching and for studying and for contemplating, meditating, to find out what is the essence of the teaching of the Buddha. And then you also need to put it into practice and see that you develop it really in your own mind, not only in meditation, but also in daily practice. So that it becomes really the nature of your mind to be kind and to be friendly with others and not to discriminate, right? I mean, if we talk about social justice, I'm really convinced that if you discriminate somebody, then this means you go against the non-violence, one of the main principles of the Buddhist teaching. So this can't be in accord with what the Buddha taught, and even if he may have discriminated women in this sense at his time, then it was not out of the wish to violate others, but just because society didn't give room and allow for enough at this time, you know. So he couldn't change the whole society, and this was not what his teaching was about, to change all the society. He wanted to show people how to get out of samsara, right? So he had a different focus at this time, I think. But now we have to find our own ways, and if we wait all the time that our Asian Buddhist teachers will tell us how to do this, this will not work. I'm very sure now, after practicing Buddhism for how long?
38 years?
More than 30 years, 35 years, I don't know. I think really, I mean, we have to find our own ways how to do this. What we can learn from the Asian teachers, it is what Buddhism is about and how they have practiced it. But then we have to make the bridge ourselves, and I think it's good to do it in dialogue, to keep as long as possible in dialogue with the tradition and negotiate with them and invite them, but then it's our responsibility to confront them with the problems we are facing when we try to implement Buddhism in the way they taught it to us or we understood it. This must not be the same. Huh? So they will just tell us the way how it works in their culture or how it worked in the past in their traditions, but this doesn't mean that it works today in the new context. So, and this is really, they need this feedback. You know from your own experience how important it is that you get feedback from people so that you can change, right? If there is no feedback and nobody tells them, look, I have problems to put this in practice because of this and that, you don't give them a chance to reflect on it, you know. You have to really keep in dialogue with the people. This is very important, I think. And therefore, I think it's our, for example, I had this also again about the nuns' ordination. There was a European conference on Tibetan Buddhism in Switzerland some years ago, and I happened to be on the panel there with the Buddhist teachers as one of the Western Buddhist teachers, and then the moderator, who was a Tibetan and who was fluent in English, His Holiness the Dalai Lama, came, and he said to His Holiness the Dalai Lama, well, you have engaged for such a long time to help to revive the Buddhist nuns order, and so, but still somehow nothing really happens, and we are surprised that all these Western Buddhist centers, they don't take up the issue. They just keep quiet. Usually in the Western societies, gender equity is a very important topic. And we thought, oh, all the Western Buddhist centers will jump on it and say, well, this is not possible, you have to do something for the nuns. But there's hardly anybody raising the issue. So we are wondering why. You know, this is what I heard also from many Tibetan politicians who are surprised why these Western Buddhists, you know, I mean, why they don't continue with their values and confront traditional Buddhism with their values and question it on the parts where it doesn't match, you know. Instead, what they are doing is they just follow what the Tibetans tell them, and they go back into the hierarchies. And then you hear, for example, Western monks who feel so happy that because they are male, they are superior. How can this be, you know, that suddenly a Westerner who has Western education feels that if I'm a man, just because of having the male organ, male sex, you know, I mean, I'm a better human being. This is not in line with the Buddha's teaching. This is a traditional cultural thing which you find in many Asian societies. But now they are taking up again these old patterns, you know, instead of remaining with the achievements of their own culture. I think this is going wrong way. This is, nobody wants this, you know, not the Asian teachers and not the Western Buddhist teachers. This is just awkward. So I think it's really the duty of everybody to continue to think and reflect and discuss, even if it may be unpleasant, and even if you may feel like, oh, I want to keep nice relationship with my teacher, and if I bring up this awkward question, then maybe the teacher will not like me anymore. I mean, you can think about in the sense of, how do you say, non-violent speech, you know. You can think about how to put the question nicely. You can think about how to present it, that it is not too provocative and sensible for the maybe other thoughts. But definitely you should make your point and bring it up and not just remain silent. And I think if we go in this way, by introducing Buddhism step by step, then it will become beautiful, beautiful.
How to bring the texts and the teachings themselves into dialogue with our social reality?
Yeah, I mean, in general, I mean, we have these teachings of the Buddha that we should not accept his teachings just because he said this, but we should really verify by ourselves and reflect, and only if we find it's true, then we should put it into practice. So I remember when I started with Buddhism, I heard this sentence and it sounds nice, but I thought, how can I verify the teaching of the Buddha, whether it's true or not? I mean, I don't know what all the teaching of the Buddha is about, right? First I have to understand what is Buddhism, what the Buddha said, and then I can start questioning it. But without having the basic education, then it's going wrong. But I think already considering the Buddhist texts themselves, you know, I mean, when you say how to get the Buddhist texts in line with our societies and our social living, this is already a big thing you are raising, because this is one of the main points. You should rely on the words of the Buddha and not only on secondary literature of some people who say this is what the Buddha said. You should really check whether this is true that the Buddha said this, and this is the way how the Buddha himself has presented it. So I think we have to follow up in the sources. We have really to ask the teachers when they say, well, you know, the Buddha said you should do like this and like that. We should ask, oh, interesting, where did the Buddha say this? Can you show to me? Can you please give me the source? I would like to check afterwards. I like to find this text. Can you tell me where to find it, you know? And then you should investigate and really see. Oh, and then you find a commentary, let's say, from, I don't know, maybe Tsongkhapa, one big scholar in Gelug tradition, or you find from, I don't know, Mipam Rinpoche, or the 8th Karmapa, or something like this, you know, and the 8th Karmapa says, oh, like this and this, and then you should see and say, oh, okay, that's interesting. He says the Buddha said, but there's no source where the Buddha said this. So I'm interested where, so I go into the words of the Buddha, into the sutras, you know, and really check whether it's there. And then sometimes you may find the source, very nice. Sometimes you may be surprised that the Buddha said quite something different, or he said different things at different occasions. And so especially the things where you have some doubt, you know, I think you should investigate. The things you think you take for guarantee, maybe everybody says, maybe some consensus everywhere, maybe right. Huh? Interesting also, like about the Four Noble Truths. I mean, easily to find where the Buddha said the Four Noble Truths. You can easily verify that this is really what the Buddha said. But there are other things, like for example, I came along with a source in a book by Pabonka Rinpoche, saying in a teaching, these were notes from a teaching, minutes from a teaching taken, and there it says, well, everybody who has gathered here is in this lucky situation of having the characteristics of somebody who has attained a higher rebirth, except those among us who are women. I thought, what? Everybody has the... What kind of characteristics of higher rebirth are they talking about? Huh? So I checked the list. There was a list in the text giving the characteristics, and one of this was to have a male organ. And I thought, this is strange, because I saw this list before given by Sakya Pandita, but it didn't have the male organ in. So then I tried to compare the two lists, and I saw the sequence is different. Most of the points matched with each other, but there was one difference. This was this male organ. I thought, this is strange. Sakya Pandita lived much earlier than Pabonka Rinpoche, with some centuries in between. So let's see how Tsongkhapa, the founder of the Gelug tradition, has presented it in his Lamrim teachings, you know. So then I went into the different Lamrim, the great Lamrim, the great treatises on the stages to enlightenment, and the middle stages of, of this text. And I checked there, and I found everywhere that indeed he had this male organ in, you know. So I don't know where this came from, but it definitely, at the time of Sakya Pandita, it hasn't been there, you know. Somewhere in between it must have come in. And I guess, either it's from a different source which I'm not aware of, or it just came in because this was the cultural way of thinking in ancient Tibet, that male are superior to women, and they felt it has to be somewhere in. But if you look into the text, I mean, you find very clearly that that the Buddha talked himself. You find this in the words of the Buddha, that he was speaking about precious human rebirth. So he was saying, whenever you have when you are reborn as a human being, then you have attained a higher rebirth, and this is very precious, and you should make good use of it. And he doesn't differentiate between a precious male rebirth and a less precious female rebirth or something like this. And then for sure, I mean, recently a Tibetan leading Lama, whom I met at the airport, he said, but then, you know, what do you mean by we are equal? Obviously men and women are different, they are not equal. And I said, well, I mean they are equally valid. They have the same value, equal validity. And he said, oh yes, oh that's good, yes, that's true. They are equally valid, you know. So I mean, sometimes if you use the word equal, maybe also people don't understand means you are ignoring that there is difference. And I think this is not what the whole thing is about when we speak about gender equity. It's just that we all have the same Buddha nature. We all have the potential to attain enlightenment, and we should have the equal opportunities to realize our goal, enlightenment, you know. So I mean, this is the way how I would really try, you know, with every teaching I find how to relate it. I mean, I think the most important thing is to listen to our heart and to use our common sense when we study Buddhism. You know, we shouldn't, I mean, I know it's difficult. You are learning, you are engaging something completely new, means Buddhism, and it's very difficult to decide what is really Buddhism and what is cultural. Yeah, but I think we have some kind of inner sense. I mean, if we say something like listen to your heart, you know, and use your common sense, I mean, if something is contradictive with the values of your own society and of your own culture, with the achievements you have been taught at school, then you should question it and really ask, is this really what Buddhism wants to teach me? I remember, for example, my parents, sometimes when I was a new Buddhist and I visited my parents, and I told them, oh, you know, but we in Buddhism, we see it different, it's like this and that. Sometimes they said, are you sure that this is what Buddhism teaches? We think you better check back with your Geshe and see whether this is true, you know. And then I went home, I went back to the center and I met my teacher, and I said, well, my family is sending you greetings, and we had this and this discussion, and I told them about Buddhism like this, and then they said, I should better check you, and he started laughing and said, oh, good parents, you completely misunderstood. This is not what I'm saying, or this is not what Buddhism is saying, you know. So very often my parents really got it, you know, and understood what is Buddhism about. And so, I mean, I think if we keep in dialogue with our families, not give up our families, say, no, now I'm a Buddhist, now I have no longer time to meet with you secular people who are not on the path to Buddhahood, you know. I have no time, I just have to devote all my time on Buddhist practice. Something wrong, you know, definitely wrong, because I mean, the Buddhist people want you to keep in touch with your families. They want to keep you going in your positions you have at society. They want you to remain in your job and continue your life, and maybe a few may become Buddhist monks or nuns and set up a monastery or nunnery. This would be nice, huh? And then I think it's good if other people can support them to become, I mean, when we speak about preserving Buddhism, we need some people, whether monks and nuns or lay people, I don't mind, as long as they have the qualification, you know. I think what is most important is that we have people who learn as much as possible about Buddhism, especially if they are young, some young people, I think we should have, who are able to study the language and to maybe undergo also some academic training and really study Buddhism carefully in your own language, you know, in Spanish, to really transmit the teaching in this way. But not everybody who wants to practice Buddhism has to study the whole thing. So we have to make different steps, you know, for people who really work in the progress of transmitting the teachings. I mean, by fully studying and not to leave out important things. So make sure we really get the most important parts of Buddhism and continue teaching them. And then we need other people who get more socially engaged and put into practice what they can and practice it from their heart, and they should all support each other, I think. And then sometimes in between to have some retreats and to also withdraw, not to go into the monastery, but to withdraw for some time to the monasteries or retreat centers close to them and do some intensive meditation to get a flavor of it, and then again stabilizing oneself to be more grounded for daily practice. In this way I think it can work.